In the eternal city, a city as vibrant as a cheerful artist's brush, there's a strange rule. Everyone's shadow can speak and judge its owner. Shadows aren't just reflections, they're recorders of truth. 8-year-old Taidy is a bright red-haired girl who loves to play, but has a habit of making excuses. Whether it's a small matter or a big deal, she's always ready to blame others. When she spills a carton of milk, she makes a slightly displeased face, points to the spilled milk on the floor, and says, "It wasn't me, it was the cat who ran into it." When she forgets to do her homework, she mutters, "The teacher is the one who gave too much."
One day, Taidy was playing a board game in the brightly lit living room. She pointed at her friend sitting across from her with an annoyed expression. Her friend looked a little flustered. Taidy squealed, You stepped on my move and made me lose." As Taidy blamed her friend for losing the game, her shadow remained silent. But that night, her shadow, which was usually calm, slowly began to move on its own. She stretched taller and spoke in a cold, resolute voice. "You say it's not you anymore, but I know it's you. You've been blaming others too much." I didn't mean to." "The truth isn't intentional. It's just right there. Can you stop talking? Then let's see who's really the cause of all the problems you've created." The next morning, Taidy woke up and stood in the middle of her bedroom. The soft, golden sunlight filtered through the window onto the wooden floor. She looked down at her feet in shock, frozen in terror. Her shadow had disappeared. The bedroom floor was empty, without a single reflection. Shadow gone!
In the eternal city, anyone without a shadow is branded as no real being. They are distrusted, unable to enter the market or even communicate normally with others. Taidy tries every means to create a new shadow, standing in the scorching sun and jumping and dancing under the firelight, but no shadow appears. People begin to whisper and look at her with a mixture of pity and disgust. Taidy gasps, "Why? Why is there no shadow?" The townspeople whisper, "Poor thing, she's branded no real being." Taidy feels like she's disappearing. Taidy walked away from the crowd, embarrassed, until she heard a faint metallic sound behind her. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The sound came from a small, childish robot named Clock, silver with a clock face on his belly. It spoke in a clear voice. "I was created to warn humans against lying, and today I'll warn you." Taidy frowned. "I'm not lying, I don't want to make others angry." Clock tilted his head. "But you're angry at yourself, aren't you?" The words struck the girl's heart like a hammer. She paused, then asked softly, "Then, will you help me find it, my shadow?" "Of course," Clock replied with a smile. "But you have to be willing to listen to your own truth." Taidy set out to find her shadow, her face full of determination. With an unexpected companion, Clock, she traveled with her. Their journey took them through the dark and chaotic market of lies. Dim yellow lights illuminated stalls filled with beautiful glass bottles of various shapes. Crowds of people were queuing to buy the curious items. Taidy pointed to a stall filled with beautiful glass bottles and asked Clock in surprise, "What are these people selling? Just empty bottles with labels that say accident, misunderstanding, or friend?" Clock replied with a calm expression, but with a hint of knowingness. "That's an excuse in a bottle used by those who don't want to take responsibility
to cover up their own mistakes. They're willing to trade time for temporary peace of mind. Taidy fell silent immediately. She looked thoughtful and slightly saddened, looking at the bottle labeled, "Not me." She remembered the words on it, words she'd uttered almost every day. She herself had once been one of those who sold time to escape her problems. The girl gulped. She thought about all the lies she'd told, but she tried to smile. "It's okay. I'll tell the truth from now on." Clock's voice ticked. "Easy to say, but can you really do it?" This journey began to give her a clearer picture of her past self. Finally, following Clock's advice, they arrived at the Tower of Reflection, a towering structure shrouded in darkness. Taidy climbed with difficulty, and there she found her shadow, standing on the horizon. Tidy's shadow was much larger and taller than Taidy. It was a menacing, pitch-black figure, more fearsome than ever. The shadow that had once been a part of her was now the most fearsome judge. The shadow spoke not in anger, but in disappointment. "How much have you blamed others, Taidy? I'm tired of bearing witness to your deception." Taidy lowered her head slightly, her face filled with sadness and pain. She spoke through tears, genuinely feeling it. I just don't want anyone to hate me. I'm afraid that if everyone finds out I've done something wrong, they'll abandon me." Taidy confessed the fear behind all the lies, but the shadow responded with a deeper truth. "But in the end, didn't you abandon who you are?" The shadow continued. "You hate yourself every time you lie, don't you? Every time you make excuses, you cause yourself more trouble than anyone else." Taidy collapsed onto the stone floor in pain, tears streaming down her face uncontrollably. Her shadow softened a little. It still looked large, but it didn't seem scary anymore. Her shadow wasn't angry, but was grieving for being a part of her. Taidy looked up at the shadow with a mixture of hope and fear. The large shadow held out a dark hand to her. It trembled slightly, a symbol of hidden vulnerability. "If you want me to be part of you again, you must do the one thing you've never done. You must accept everything you've done, both good and bad." Taidy stared at the shadow, at her past self, filled with fear. The only thing she had to do was to do the hardest thing in her life, accept the truth. Taidy closed her eyes tightly in pain, but held firm. Her hands clenched tightly, showing all the courage she had gathered. The light began to shine brighter around her, signaling a change. She spoke firmly, her voice trembling but filled with sincerity. "Yes, I did something wrong. I upset my friends. I spilled the milk carton. I forgot to do my homework. And I've been running from the truth all this time. I'm sorry." Suddenly, a miracle happened. A soft golden light enveloped the shadow. The intimidating shadow began to shatter into thousands of tiny, soft golden light particles. It didn't disappear, but those lights merged with Tidy's body once more. Tidy's face was filled with joy, and she felt a warm, energetic feeling fill her. Bright light filled her surroundings. She stood up, and when she looked down at the ground, her shadow was back, but it looked even brighter than before. The shadow no longer judged her, but was now a loyal follower. When Taidy returned to the Eternal City, she no longer hid. She admitted to her teacher that it was her fault for forgetting to do her homework. She apologized to her friends who had blamed them. She walked to the once dark Market of Lies, now brightly lit, and recounted her journey with determination. To awaken the townspeople from their lies. People in the market began to stop trading and listen to her with interest and contemplation. The bottles of excuses remained on the stalls. Taidy didn't blame anyone, but simply said, "These excuses and the bottles don't make our lives easier. They steal time and truth from us." The townspeople began to believe Taidy's words. They began smashing the excuse bottles marked misunderstanding on the stone floor. Some even began smashing their own excuse bottles and confronting the truth. Taidy and Clock stood behind them, watching with hope and admiration. Taidy's shadow was clearly visible on the ground. Clock smiled, something robots rarely do. He spoke to Taidy in a slightly warmer tone. "You've found yourself. Accepting the truth has set your timing right again." Taidy smiled back and said, "Yes, Clock, and no one can ever cause me any trouble, except myself, because if I choose the truth, nothing can hurt me." Taidy and Clock smiled at each other. Taidy had a confident, peaceful expression. Clock looked strangely happy. The sunlight shone brightly on both of their faces. The entire city began to reflect brighter shadows, because when people began to be honest with their hearts, shadows would shine instead of swallowing them. Taidy finally accepted the truth and learned an important lesson she would always remember. No one can cause us any trouble except ourselves. That night, Taidy sat by the window in her bedroom. The soft moonlight filtered in, casting a clear, friendly shadow on the bedroom floor. Taidy stared at her shadow cast under the moonlight, her expression calm and gentle. The atmosphere was quiet and warm. She talked to her shadow as if she were talking to the closest friend in her life. The shadow whispered softly, "Thank you for choosing the truth. It makes me the happiest shadow." Taidy's face was filled with understanding and inner strength. She closed her eyes slightly, smiling gently as she hugged herself. We'll be together forever, not to escape our mistakes, but to learn from them. And I won't blame anyone anymore, because I know that every problem that comes my way, I have the power to choose how to respond to it. Taidy finally understood that the real troubles don't come from the outside world, but from our dishonesty with ourselves. When we befriend the truth in our hearts, we always have the power to fix everything. This story teaches us that no one can cause us trouble except ourselves, because what we must overcome isn't the outside world, but our own minds, which often create shadows of lies and fear to escape our mistakes. When we dare to face the truth and admit our mistakes, the power to control our lives is restored immediately, making it so that nothing in the outside world can truly harm us anymore.